So the title of this talk, I've titled it Building the Audio Programmer Power Through Inexperience, Transparency, and Sharing. And the reason that I've titled it like this is because it's really the inexperience that is actually almost put us, and I say us because the audio programmer isn't just me anymore. I actually have a little team that we actually work together towards delivering all of these services. And but it was really the inexperience that was actually the advantage that really kind of helped get us into the position that we are today. So what does this talk about? So I guess one thing that I can express is that Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was the audio programmer. The thing is that anything that's worthwhile, whether it's learning about software development, whether it's learning about martial arts, whether it's learning to paint, learning any skill, takes time. And this is no different. Second thing is that I'm a very strong believer that empathy conquers all. And that's whether you're planning on being a developer who's going to be hovering in front of a computer all day, or whether you're going to be a person who's going to be communicating with other people day in and day out. The importance of understanding other people's needs, whether it's your client's needs, whether it's your employer's needs, and really having the ability to really grab those and really understand those is so important to be successful, not just in software development, but in life as well. And another thing that I'll talk about is a little bit about kind of the cost of entitlement. So when you go through life and you learn these skills, it's very easy to get entitled and feel as though life and circumstances owes you something, or that there's something that you deserve. And I say that speaking from personal experience. So this is me a while ago. This is probably about 10 years ago. So I used to be a international DJ and producer. I've actually DJed in about 25 countries around the world. And there was a point in my career where things were going really well. I was traveling all over. I was doing like celebrity parties, like here's me with Rihanna. And but there was a point where things didn't go so well. And things kind of bottomed out for me. And that I basically was broke. I had no money. My DJing career had just basically fallen out from under the floor, from under me. I was getting no gigs, no bookings, and I had nothing. And I felt this deep sense of bitterness and this deep sense of that because I had accomplished these things, because I had DJ'd a party for Rihanna, and because we took a picture together, that maybe the world owed me something, or maybe I deserved to get gigs. And that, unfortunately, is not the correct approach or the effective approach. So like I said, I was broke. And so I had to start again. And I had to figure out what I was going to do with my life. The thing is that I was, at the time, I was 37 years old. So people, when they get to this age, normally they start to feel the tension that the clock is ticking. You know, that life, when you're 20 and you're young, you feel like, oh, I have this whole life to live. All of a sudden 37 hits and you feel like, oh, I'm not going to be here forever, you know, and that it's not going to be long before my body and my mind aren't going to be able to function maybe the way that they used to when I was 25 or 30 years old. And I felt that, and I felt this sense of panic, and I felt like I need to start again. And so I found this program at Goldsmiths University called Music Computing. And it was a chance. I'd never written a line of code in my life. I knew nothing about computer science, and it was really just something that I thought looked interesting. Let's give it a shot, basically. And so this is me with some of my classmates back in, this is in 2015. And so this is in October. So I'd been in the class for a couple weeks. This is one of our first outings. And it was a good time. And it was really interesting because I was thrown into this new world that I wasn't really aware of about music and about sound and about how people were expressing sound in different ways and the way that people were using audio software in ways that I couldn't even conceive or conceptualize at the time, such as using it for art and for these other purposes. And I was very fascinated by it. And I really felt like, why does the whole world not know about this, what these wonderful people are doing? The professors at Goldsmiths University were geniuses, thought they should be just household names. And so I was going through this journey of learning audio software development, learning some of the basics. And after my second year, once again, I felt that panic set in. What am I going to do after university? And I started looking at job specs and what positions were available. And they were all mentioning Juice. They were all mentioning C++. All of them were pretty much mentioning senior developer with 5 years or more experience. And I felt very worried. I felt like, wow, what am I going to do? And I felt over the summer after my second year, I need to start really just getting myself in gear and starting to teach myself these skills. And so that's when I decided to do a YouTube channel, and I called it The Audio Programmer. And really the principles of it were that I was going to teach myself this skill. And then what I was going to do is I was going to teach the skill after I learned it on the YouTube channel through a tutorial to others to kind of reinforce my own learning. And I think that this really comes down to an important concept that I think that I'd like to emphasize, which is that everybody is unique, and you really have to, and in order to find real success, you really have to dig down into yourself and be reflective about yourself and ask yourself, what am I good at? What skills do I bring to the table? And there are some people that may be watching this talk and saying to themselves, well, I don't have any skills. And I seriously doubt that, right? There's something that each one of you knows probably more about than the average person, okay? It might be about martial arts. It might be about football. It might be about playing the guitar, right? So what's important is being able to find these skills and being able to leverage other skills around them. And I think software development is a fantastic way to do this because, of course, with software development, everything is in software now. And if, for example, if you were playing guitar and you were a guitar player, now you know a little bit more about melody, you know more about string instruments and how they work than the average person. And the idea would be that you would start building a piece of software that would be somewhere around that area of expertise that you have that's more than the average person. And that's what I sought to do with the Audio Programmer. Or at the time it wasn't intentional, but that's just kind of the way that it ended up. So going back to my approach with the channel, I read something from a famous physics professor called Richard Feynman, and he has this thing called the Feignman Technique, which is a way of reinforcing learning or learning very complex tasks quickly. So it's a 4-step process. Step one is that you pretend to teach this concept to a kid or to a rubber duck. They use this term rubber duck as, you're talking to an imaginary person, and that what you want to do is you want to take this concept, and it could be a very complex concept, right? Maybe it might be digital signal processing, and what you want to do is you want to teach it in such a simple way that a child or a person who knows very little about the subject could understand it. Now, during your time when you're actually trying to teach this, you're going to find that there are gaps in your explanation. So you may get to certain parts where you say, oh, I don't exactly remember how that, what that's about, or that particular concept. And what you do is you go back to your paperwork, your notes that you've taken, and you identify gaps in your explanation, and then you reinforce it and you come back to it. And then you have this third step in your process where you organize this and you simplify it and you reinforce and you try to do it again. And then you have this fourth step, which is transmit, which is once again trying to explain the concept to somebody else who knows very little or perhaps nothing about the concept. And that's the Richard Feignman technique. And this is the basic concept of what I was thinking with the audio programmer, learning it myself and then trying to teach it to somebody else in a way that even if they knew nothing about the subject, they could understand it. Then there were other influences as well with the audio programmer, and these are just things from my past experience. Like I said, I've done a lot of traveling. I love traveling. I love culture, love meeting other people who are from different cultures. Of course, I have my DJing, so I know a lot about DJ culture. I know a lot about different types of music. These are all things that, once again, are just my experiences, and that I started building this thing around these experiences. Also, there were two teachers that were very influential on my style as well. There's an Egyptologist named Bob Breyer. So I love ancient Egypt, ancient Egyptian history. And there's a person named Bob Breyer. And if you ever listen to one of his lectures or any of his documentaries, you'll see that he has this unbridled enthusiasm for everything Egyptian. And he has this very powerful way of explaining ancient Egypt and telling stories. And I thought that was very powerful. And another person, if you've ever searched on the interwebs for simple coding tutorials, there's a person named Daniel Schiffman. He's also there in New York. And he has this channel called The Coding Train. And I've been watching Schiffman for years. And he was a person that I learned early creative coding concepts from. And anybody who's watched Schiffman knows about his enthusiasm. Once again, fantastic teacher, great enthusiasm. And I thought, this is how I want people to feel when they watch the audio programmer, that there's this sense of discovery. There's this sense of finding something that they've been looking for so long. So that's how I started it. So this is the first video that I did. And what's interesting is that so many people, when they get ready to start, they think about things like, oh, I don't really have a professional setup. I don't really have a professional way of recording my screen or my software. So I had no mic, so I just had to talk into my laptop mic. And I was starting an audio programming channel, and I had barely any programming experience. I mean, how wild is that? Yeah, that's just something that is, looking back, I mean, I really felt scared, like, oh, people were really going to criticize my coding techniques and really just tell me I'm doing it all completely wrong, which really didn't happen. Actually, a lot of those fears were actually just imaginary, never really happened, or very rarely. Yeah, and then I didn't have any sort of professional screen recorder or anything like that, but you have QuickTime that's on Mac, so I recorded it with QuickTime, and hardly anybody watched. And I would show you the actual numbers, but I think the first video, maybe the first month, maybe less than 50 people watched, right? But I persevered with it, and I thought, and the reason I persevered with it was because I wasn't doing it for likes. I wasn't doing it for views. I was doing it because I was trying to teach myself how to do this. And even when I'm doing tutorials now, it's still because I'm reinforcing what I'm trying to teach myself. And the comments are always funny. So we have this one, we get a wide range of comments. A lot of them are things like this, that they've been getting into audio programming and they want to watch the videos. Some people call me their hero, which is, of course, feels really nice. And then you also have ones that are quite funny. This one was actually from a couple hours ago. Wish I could hear this audio-based tutorial from an audio professional. I love that. And a video about this sound, and the sound of the video is shit. I mean, how great is that, right? And it's nice because I think once again it keeps me humble, right? It makes sure that my feet are planted on the ground, and that no matter what sort of success that this channel or this company may find, that it's just good to be humble. And and you can see here, this is when I got my first 1,000 subscribers, which is it was a huge accomplishment for me. But you see how different it was back then. I mean, there's these logos are just logos that I just happened to be able to create from like a free web graphic design site. So I didn't have any money, but it was kind of lo-fi. It was kind of there wasn't really any budget, but you make it work and you just start building from the ground up. So then as we were starting to receive, because it was just me at the time, as I started receiving comments on the channel with the tutorials, people started asking questions, and some of them I could answer and some of them I didn't really know the answer to. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to have a place where people could connect and start just asking each other these questions and offering each other help? And so that's when I started the Discord, and I think that was in late 2017, might have been early 2018. It actually started off on another messenger service called Telegram, but a lot of people were having difficulty with it, so I decided to move it over to Discord. And yeah, I think that one thing was that the landscape of audio development resources in at that time in 2017 was actually pretty scarce. I mean, you had the Juice Forum, you have some other audio development forums like KVR, but I think a lot of them were quite elitist, and I think a lot of people felt intimidated to come in and ask questions and to introduce themselves and just let themselves be known to other people. And I think a lot of people felt that they were going to be ridiculed. It's tough for me to be elitist if I'm a beginner myself, right? I'm just starting to learn all this stuff myself. And so, even now, when people join this Discord server, many times, as long as I can squeeze in a couple seconds, I actually welcome every new person who joins the server to the channel. And I think that really helped in letting people feel welcome, letting people feel that there's a community here. And at first it wasn't, like I said, these things take time. There was, maybe for the first year, there were probably, 5 to 8 people who were the kind of central core of of this Discord. And I remember people joking, even, there were some people that were actually joking early on that, we'd have 100 people or 200 people who were in the Discord, but only maybe less than 10 people were actually participating. But the community grew over time, and it just grows through continuous care. I'm on there 7 days a week, more or less, not all the time, but I do check all the messages, and we very rarely have problems at all. Pardon me. We very rarely have any sort of problems. They're so rare and few and far in between. And I think in our whole time, I might have had to actually ban maybe 3 people, 4 people in the time since we started. And I think a lot of that is because of the ecosystem and the expectation of the community, really, because I've always just felt like anybody who joins this group, if you're interested in audio development, no matter what your background is, no matter what culture or what gender you are, you're welcome. And a lot of people, I don't even really know their gender. I don't really even know, they tell me where they're from. A lot of times they introduce themselves and they tell us where they're from, but we just keep it really centered around audio programming and around DSP and around the curiosity of learning. And what I really find interesting about our Discord is the variety of people that join. So for instance, we had a 15-year-old who joined today who was just learning audio programming, curious about it. But we also have some of the top developers from companies like Facebook and Apple and Google that I've actually seen in this Discord as well. And I've actually seen some of them actually ask technical questions in the Discord as well, which is really, really interesting. I really find that very, very interesting. And so I really think that mix of professional developers and people who are just getting started in audio development is a very interesting mix. And I really, and if there's something that I'd really love to do more, is I'd love to find more ways that can be facilitated, that mix between developers who are already in the industry and people who are actually curious about getting into the industry. So 6 months after I started the audio programmer, after I started the channel, a person named Rachel Locke called me. She was actually working with the Juice team. So she was on the Juice team, and she said, hey, she messaged me out of the blue, I think on Facebook, and she said, hey, the Juice team were talking about you this morning, and you were the subject of the stand-up this morning, and they were really impressed. And that really blew my mind, because I always had this fear that I'm just a beginner, I'm just starting with this, and that they're obviously experts, some of the best C++ developers in the world. They're just probably looking at my tutorials thinking he's doing that wrong. Like, none of this is right. But they actually invited me to the Audio Developer Conference, which was happening around that time. And so Rachel was actually the first person to actually kind of introduce me and get me into the industry. So thank you, Rachel. And that I went to the Audio Developer Conference, and it was really my first introduction into meeting professional developers, meeting people who were actually doing this for a living. And I was pretty in awe seeing developers who had created software for Native Instruments, for Apple, people who actually worked for Google, and meeting them in person. And it really let me know, okay, this is where the bar is in terms of where I need to be in the industry. And I'm nowhere near where I need to be. So I was still a student, and I was still broke. And I didn't have any money, but this was a pivotal moment for me, because I knew something important was happening at this point in time. I didn't know where it was going to go exactly, but I knew I could feel that there was some type of positive energy that was happening in the audio programmer. 1 year after starting it, I actually graduated in 2018, and so about a little over 1 year after I started the audio programmer, I got invited to join the Juice team by Jean-Baptiste Thibault, and he had asked me if I wanted to help with the audio developer conference, helping to actually help put it together. And so I joined the Juice team. I was actually on the Juice team working on the audio developer conference. And of course, through osmosis of being around Julian Storer, who's the creator of Juice, and people like Ed Davies, who's the person in the picture, and Tom Poole and the rest of the Juice team, you obviously just soak up some of that. You soak up a little bit of the culture and a little bit of that drive. And I was very privileged to have had the opportunity to join them. And we did a hackathon at Abbey Road Studios. If you don't know, Abbey Road Studios is probably one of the most famous studios in the world. And so we did a hackathon there, and that was a really proud moment once again. And then I helped to facilitate the Audio Developer Conference with the rest of the ADC team in 2018, and I've actually helped to put ADC together since that point, since ADC 2018. So once again, a very proud moment for me. Right after ADC 2018 and the contract ended with Juice, I got a call from Ableton. So Ableton, and big shout out to Neil Burdock, who's actually the person with the tattoo in the picture. He was the software engineering manager at the time, and he reached out to me. And he actually two people separately from Ableton reached out to me about two separate things, which I found was interesting, which goes to show, I guess if I pause there for a second, it goes to show that the power of showing your work, the power of showing what you're working on and how you're progressing in your field. And I mean, I wasn't a very good developer. I mean, I was decent, but the fact that I was teaching somebody else something that maybe they didn't know about, but I knew a little bit about, and just that positive energy, that must have made them feel something where they felt like they wanted to have my energy in the building somehow. And so Neil Burdock reached out to me for a special project that I can't really say anything about, but I'll suffice to say it was a very life-changing experience for me working with them in Berlin. They were very, it really affected the way that I looked at things, and being around the team and being around the Ableton culture, which I found to be phenomenal. But in particular, I had one very life-changing experience that really made me reflect. And that was when I met this person. So I was walking in Ableton, and Ableton is this big maze. So it's actually kind of three buildings, and you kind of walk in this maze. It's almost like a maze, and some of the doors are open and some of them are not. And I bumped into this person, and he says, Josh, I've been wanting to meet you. I'd love for us to set up a meeting and to get to know you better. And I wanted to talk to you. I said, oh, that sounds great. Yeah, who are you? He says, I'm Gerhard Bellis. I'm the CEO of Ableton. And I was like, wow, holy cow, the CEO of Ableton wants to meet me. And the meeting was like a week later, and I could barely sleep because I was wondering, what's he going to ask me? What's he going to, what does he need from me? And so we sat down so we had our meeting virtually. And the first question he said, I just wanted to meet you, and I wanted to ask you, is there anything that I can do for you? Is there any way that I can help you with anything? And I found that to be to have a huge impact on me, because I thought, here is a person who is a CEO of a multi-million dollar company, stops me in the hall. He knows who I am. I don't even know who he is. I should probably know who he is. And he is actually taking time out of his busy schedule to say, I want, is there any way that I could be of help to you? That really made me think a lot about my approach and the way that I approach everything that I do with the audio programmer. And I really keep this encounter in the back of my mind in many of my business dealings and in many of my relationships. And I really think that this approach has really helped lead the audio programmer to some of the success that it's achieved. So around that time, there was another company that I was contracting for. This is a company they're a startup in LA, and they're called Sing. And they're working on a speaker. Here's a picture of the speaker. It hasn't been released yet, but it's supposed to come out this year, I believe. And one of the people who used to work on the Juice team, Feignman Giles, he actually was the person who brought me in, and he said I would you should really meet Josh and work with him. And I ended up becoming their software engineering manager in the early days when they first started, and they grew. At the time, it was a team of 3 people, and I didn't know anything about managing a software engineering team, so I had to kind of learn on the fly. And but it was a very interesting experience, because the CTO was this person named Fruz family, who I believe the HomePod was actually his university project. So he got to get hired by Apple, and he kind of saw his own university project get developed from prototype to kind of finished product. I mean, how amazing is that? And then the CEO was a person named Chris Stringer, who was actually a longtime senior designer for Apple. He actually was one of the main designers behind the iPhone and iMac and so many of the other influential Apple products. And being around them, obviously, it's like, wow, does not get much bigger than that, does it? But I bring up Sing because one of the things that they asked me was, they said, hey, we need to hire a whole bunch of developers, and we know that you have this community. Do you know anybody that fits any of these job descriptions? And I was looking at these job descriptions. I'm like, yeah, I know. I have a friend that would be great for that. And I ended up, they said, well, if you help us actually hire these people, we can pay you a commission for it. And that's how I got into recruitment. And that's how I started getting into contracting, was through that relationship. Kind of something that happened organically by chance. But once again, I think the point of this story is that you really have to open yourself up to connections. The more that you can open yourself up to connections, the more opportunities that things like this have to actually interact and collide with you and collide with your world. So that's really what happened there. Another thing that kind of helped that helped me realize that, hey, maybe this recruiting thing could be something serious was when I was in LA for NAMM, which is a conference that they used to have in Anaheim, and to show off all the new music products that were coming out for the year. I was sitting down, and I was just like messaging on my iPhone, and the person in the middle came up to me, and he said, Josh, I just want to let you know that I'm a big fan of your channel. My name's Steve Duda. Right. And if you know who Steve Duda is the person who created Serum, which is probably the biggest selling plugin of all time. And he also used to be the engineer for Dead Mouse, and so he's done a lot of stuff with that. And he said, "Hey, why don't we go out to dinner?" And I said, "Hey, I'd love to bring a friend of mine with me, and I think you two would get along great. And let me." Can I bring somebody along? And he said, "Yeah, sure." And that's my friend on the left, Eyal Amir. And it turns out that Steve actually hired Eyal, and Eyal actually developed for Xfer, and then Eyal's actually gone on, like he's left Xfer since, and he's started his own thing. But the fact that I could help facilitate that connection felt like there's something there that's really awesome that could help really sustain the audio programmer and the community. Then we got around that same time as well, we started getting into developing plugins. So potential clients were starting to come to me and say, "I want to develop a software product. I want to develop a plugin. Do you know developers who might be able to help us do that?" I was like, "Yeah, I know loads of developers." And so we actually started developing plugins. And this is one of them that we created called Hermes. It's something a little bit like Nexus, so like a sampling instrument that did quite well for him. And the person we did it for, his name's Busyworks Beats. He's got like 800,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel. And so it was something that was successful, and we continue to do that all the time, but except now it's actually on a much bigger scale. We actually have project managers who manage the projects. And in the beginning, it was really just me and one developer, but now we have multiple developers working on a project, and it's actually turning into a pretty big, pretty interesting operation. So and so on. So I could continue to talk about the different clients and different people that we work with, but I think you get the idea. And it's really not to really brag or to like put ourselves on a pedestal. It's really just to show the magic of humility and the magic of serving. And so some of the lessons learned here, one of them is, of course, humility. And if Gerhard, from the CEO of Ableton, can do it, so can we. And that's something that I always really keep in the back of my mind, even back from, and I think it's something that's been a lesson that people have learned through time, even in the Roman days, when the emperors of Rome used to do what's called their triumph, where they would actually do like a parade through the streets after a huge victory from a war. Behind there would be a person that would be holding the oak leaf crown over their head, and there'd be a person that would actually be behind them whispering that they're only human. So we can see that even back then, people understood how important humility is. And this is probably right up there with humility in terms of the way that we operate and the way that we think of the community, the way that we think of potential clients, which is that we serve our community and we serve our clients. We don't sell to them. And by that, what I mean is that as the person who is the head of the company, the boss, or whatever you want to call it, I feel like I am a servant of the people who are working with me and actually doing work and contracting for the audio programmer. And when we bring people in to do different bits of work, what we talk about is I really think about their goals. What do they want to achieve, right? Because the reason that anybody wants to get hired at a company is because you want to move up a ladder, right? You want to get hired, you want to develop skills. And I always think in terms of, obviously you've got to have a certain threshold where you've got to be able to do the job, right? Like you got to have the skill, you got to have the kind of the minimum skill set where I can leave you alone and where you can actually do the work. But at the same time, I think career progression is so important. And so in a way, I'm a servant to the people that are actually working with us at the Audio Programmer, and also a servant to the community. I'm always thinking of different ways that we can serve them better. How can we be more effective for them? How can we get people more engaged? In our interactions with clients, we also carry this mantra, serving and not selling, in terms of many times people think of a selling engagement as two people who are on the opposite sides of the table, and one person is trying to sell something at the highest price that they possibly can, and the other person is trying to, of course, keep the price the lowest. I think of things more in terms of we, rather than two people sitting at opposite sides of the table, in that I am there with them on the same side of the table. That's how I mentally think of it. And we are both looking in on the project and making a decision if I'm the best person, or if us as a company are the best team to actually work on this product. And when you do that, and when you approach from a perspective of integrity and honesty and just transparency, the money comes, the money, the opportunity, the wins come. You know, when you're trying to, and I think that there's this attitude and this perspective of being plentiful, that there's plenty out there to grab. There's plenty out there, you know, that if you need something, you can just go out there and you can just grab it, right? When you operate from a position of scarcity rather than a position of prosperity, then what happens is everybody tightens up, and that it's difficult to have effective communication. It's difficult to have an effective interaction when everybody tightens up and everybody operates from a position of scarcity. So I always try to tell people, hey, if there's something you need, just tell me, just communicate it to me, and we see what we can do. The third thing is, I think, especially key for people who are students. You've really got to show your work, and you've got to show your progression as a developer, or as a whatever you want to do in life. It's so important that you show it. When I was DJing and producing, people would say, "Hey, I'm a rapper," and I would say, "Okay, rap." Or people would say, "I'm a singer." I'd say, "Okay, sing." "Oh, no, I don't really got anything on hand." Come on, like, if you're an artist, you've got art, right? And if you're a developer, you've got stuff that you've developed. And that's so important. That's probably one of the most important things in terms of career success. If you want to be a developer, if you want to be an effective developer, you have to have a portfolio with stuff that you have developed, and the stuff has to work, and it has to look good, frankly. And that's because that's really what you have to show other people when they say, "Oh, you're a C++ developer, you're an audio developer, show me something that you've actually worked on." Because that is really, for me as a person who has often been the middle person between companies and people who are doing hiring and developers, that is often the first question. Hey, what have they worked on, right? If you don't have anything that you've worked on, you could be just the killer, you can just be the best C++ or audio developer in the world. But if you don't have anything that you can show anybody, it really all falls flat. And then just finishing off, we have some, I'll give you some recommended reading. These are books that have been very influential on me, and I hope that you take the time to get them. So the first one is awesome book, phenomenal book. This has been one of the most life-changing books in my life, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Definitely read this book. Second book, especially this one, was had a huge impact for me, especially as I was learning development. and the book is called So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. This is really about taking a skill, and when you learn a skill, getting to a place on the ladder, and then getting yourself to a skill level where you can actually trade that skill in for something new and something better, like a better opportunity, right? So maybe you started a company as an intern, and you go and you're pulling grunt work that maybe you don't really want to do. But then the second job is junior developer. Then you do that for a little bit. Then you get another job that's intermediate developer or senior developer, and so on and so forth. And this book is really about the effective way to really think about that and put that into context. Third book is more for kind of entrepreneurs. Leaders Eat Last. This goes back to what I was saying before about leaders really serving the people that they're working with, and really trying to help other people really get where they want to go in life. Once again, if you can manage to give more than and manage to think more about giving and what you can give to other people rather than what you can take, that is I think that you'll find that that's a very effective way of thinking. And the last one, once again, it goes back to that thing of making something real, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not the best thing, just making something that actually exists in the world, and something that you can actually show people. And there are many books. There are many books on that. There's another one that's called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, which which could easily be a fifth book on this list, that is really about the same thing. The biggest thing is that you have to understand in times like this, it's a pandemic, right? So things are closed, opportunities may not be as plentiful as in the past. And so it's a grind, right? And we really have to face that we're living in a time where you've really just got to put in that extra bit of work. And that's really what's going to get you a job and really get you opportunities in this business. And that's it. I think I've ran right on time there. So I hope you enjoyed that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. A little round of applause for our guest.
Thank you very much.
We've got about 10 minutes for questions from the audience. Just raise your hand through Zoom, and if anybody can't figure out how to do that, just kind of wave at your camera. All right.
Yeah, I've left everybody speechless. Any questions? Nobody wants to know how to get a job or what interview. Oh, I see Lucy. Lucy's got a question there.
All right. You know what?
Hello.
I don't know. There you go.
Thank you so much for this talk. I am wondering, when you were learning to program, what were some of the most difficult concepts you learned, and what kinds of resources did you use to learn those? Are there people that you reached out to? What was your strategy for approaching those?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And I think you touch on a great point about being a developer, which is that a lot of development is about research. It's about the ability to take a concept that you don't know anything about and take an API that has poor documentation and really sifting through and figuring out what data is important and what data isn't useful. So I think Daniel Schiffman was somebody who was, especially for creative coding concepts, stuff like sound, stuff like visuals. I think he's just fantastic at explaining these things. Anything that's artistic or anything that's creative, he normally has a video that's on it. And I think he's awesome. But I think I'm trying to think of some other resources, but if it's juice related, the Juice Forum is fantastic. Then there's the Discord, the Audio Programmer Discord. That's a place where I normally go after I've Googled and I can't seem to find an answer, and normally somebody there will know. So Yeah. Anybody else? Other questions? Anybody?
I'm unmuting people one at a time.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi. How's it going?
Hi. It's good. It's good. I really enjoyed your talk. I have a question about how you filter what information you'd want to put on your channel versus what you don't. It's very, I don't know, it has like programming myself. It's very easy to be like, oh, I want to learn everything. I want to know about everything.
Mm.
So how do you filter out what do you think could be very impactful in the future versus something that's more of just a trend at the moment?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And I would say, and a lot of people have actually asked me this question. In terms of stuff that I've taught, I've really started with core concepts. So for instance, anybody that would need to develop a plugin would probably need to know about plugin architecture and how that's laid out in a framework like Juice. And then when you start talking about that, then you start talking about, well, how do I actually get visual components on the screen? So now you have to start talking about the Juice component class. And so I've really thought of it in that way. And a lot of it was really based around common things that I think that people would want to know about, things like loading an audio file. One thing that I would love to do more that I don't do enough of is just general DSP processes, like simple things like compressor, delay, things like that. But also using like the Juice DSP module to set things up like that, like the chorus, setting up a filter. So a lot of these were really things that I thought these would be common processes that may be confusing for people that I think that would become great tutorials. But a lot of them were also, what do I want to learn about next? Oh, I'll learn about this and I'll do a tutorial about it. So yeah. But yeah, if you have tutorial suggestions, please, I'd love to hear them. Okay.
Hi. Thank you so much for coming and talking. My question is, how is learning DSP and learning the very low level fundamentals of what goes on behind audio, how has it changed your relationship with music at a high level? And that maybe like the music you listen to or how you listen to it or the music you create?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I think that one thing that I've thought about a lot since I've started developing was that it's really opened me up a lot more to music as like like audio as a sonic art, and even outside of music. That's been I think in terms of the thing that's been most impactful. It's been thinking about things like art installations, sound conceived as art, things like sonifying data. That was something that I had to. At first, I kind of scoffed a little bit when people would talk about, oh, I want to take this data from NASA and I want to sonify it, and I thought, what? I'm a very practical person, so I thought, what use would that ever have? But people actually make and actually have very interesting and very very compelling use cases for things like that. Okay.
I hope we have time for just the 2 more questions that are left here.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so actually my question was, I guess you sort of touched upon it, like Lamar had asked about it briefly, but I was gonna ask, like, how you like pick like what next to do like a video on or what to learn next. Like, how do you explore that? And I guess maybe like a more simplified version of that question is like, if you were to record a video like next week about something, like what's the topic you're going to touch on next?
That's a good one. I think in terms of what I would like to do next, I think that so when I first did the tutorials, it was really about kind of something that I felt that just finding something that I felt was actually teachable and that I could actually learn for the next week. Then last year, I started doing this new tutorial series, which is like called the Juice. It's under a different playlist called the Juice 6 tutorial series. And I thought, okay, well, this one's going to be more of kind of an ordered and structured path for people to learn. So you have to start with Juice component class and learning some of the basics of like paint, using the paint method, using the timer class, and things like that. So I think there are a couple things that I would like to really cover next. One thing that I think that I haven't really covered that I'd like to cover is stuff like listeners and broadcasters. That's one that I haven't covered, and it's really actually kind of a fundamental of Juice or of any sort of programming. Having one class or one object that's listening for changes that are happening in another class or another object. So that would definitely be something. Also, look and feel. A lot of people ask me stuff about custom graphics, loading PNGs, loading SVGs, creating their own custom components, things like that. So that's definitely a direction I'd like to go.
Great. It's 7:00. I hope we have time for just this last question.
Yep.
Roxanne, please.
Hi. Thanks for the talk. I had a longer question, but I'll just use my shorter question.
No, go ahead with the longer one. It's fine.
Okay. I was wondering about. I was thinking about starting some kind of like tutorial, like showing what I'm doing. Like I'm very much in that stage where I'm a senior, like a developer, but I haven't like, other than class projects, haven't like extensively developed anything, and was thinking about using like the online community as a method of like trying to start getting into that. And I was curious about so I was thinking about doing that through the medium of streaming. And I know that you did uploaded videos on YouTube, but I guess I'm more curious in general about your thoughts about streaming, or like things like Clubhouse, like just like what are your thoughts about using those mediums? 'Cause I know you use YouTube and Discord. But...
Yeah, in terms of live streaming and streaming, I think it's definitely something that is a interesting space, and I think just in terms of real time connection, right? Because a lot of us still can't really meet in person, and human connection is important, right? It's so important for us to have, and so we have to find ways to kind of mitigate the circumstances in the meantime, and so I think that places like Clubhouse and also doing live streaming, like I've done a couple live streams over the past couple months, and those have actually been more effective than the actual tutorial videos, just because people want the chance to be able to interact with you in real time. Sometimes I'll just be live coding and actually I get stuck on problems, and people are asking me questions while I'm trying to think about my own coding problems and things like that. But also, because like you touched on with Clubhouse, with places like Clubhouse, there's so much information that's even just outside of the development process, right? That's outside of just the pure coding. How do you get a job? How do you how do you approach people? If you're freelancing and somebody approaches you for a gig, how much should you get paid? When should you get paid? Things like that. Those are also a lot of things that I would love to talk about. Just like, well, what type of salary should a software developer expect? Things like that. But I would definitely encourage you to do streaming. So what type of tutorials and what type of streaming would you do? Would it be audio software development, or?
It would involve audio software development, but also anything from that to like the whole process of audio, like making a plugin, which I've been interested in for a while, but also like making music in general, and like the process through which I do that essentially.
Yeah, I mean, like this is this is out there, but I mean, even if you wanted something that I've done with the channel lately is I've actually opened it up for other people to give their own tutorials and their own perspectives on audio software development. So even if that's something that was interesting for you, you're welcome to upload a tutorial to the channel. But if you wanted to have your own channel and your own thing, I understand that too. Sometimes people, they want to have their own thing and they want to do it their own way, which is cool. But that's always an option that's available to you if you feel like I have something that I want to express and that, I have perspectives on, how to create. If you want to do like a plugin development tutorial series, yeah, have at it. Yeah, you'd be more than welcome.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Josh. Thank you so much, everyone, for showing up tonight. Really appreciate everybody being here.